Have you heard of Jeskai Erasure? It's a card that's often overlooked because of the current fast-paced Pauper meta. But what if I told you that there's a deck that not only makes Jeskai Erasure work, but also allows you to mill your opponents out with it? This is exactly what this deck does, and it's only possible with the help of Ethereum Sculptor and its ability to make artifacts cheap. In this case, we use 2 Conjurer's Bubbles to loop between them for free when we have no cards in the library, and mill our opponents out with Jeskai Erasure, as we will have infinite card draws in a deck that is full of other support cards like Brainstorm, Accumulated Knowledge, and the omnipresent Weather the Storm. Are you ready to try this exciting new deck and dominate the Pauper scene? Let's do it! As I start the game, I'm just playing lands and trying to figure out what my opponent deck is like. It's important to figure out which card I should get rid of and which cards I should keep in my hand. For example, if I was playing against an aggressive deck, I might just put a card like Dispel back on the top of my library, so I can mill it later with cards like Consider or Mental Note. But in this case, I'm playing against Jeskai Ephemerate, so cards like Weather the Storm aren't as important and can be milled if needed. They dealt with my Jeskai Erasure with Dawnbringer Cleric and also grab an Ephemerate when they resolve an Agor of Bolas. That's where Conjurer's Bubble come in handy. They can keep bringing back any of our win condition pieces onto the bottom of our library. Since we are aiming for a long game, chaining multiple spells to cast a big Weather the Storm seems like an okay plan. Eventually, I found 2 Jeskai Erasure and played them, knowing they have a Ephemerate in hand. They don't play it right away, instead choosing to play it post-combat while keeping counter magic up. This isn't too bad, as I only need 1 Jeskai Erasure to mill myself out, and with 2 Conjurer's Bubble in hand, I can get back with my win conditions to kill them in 1 turn. So I keep playing cantrips to mill myself some more, and with a Giga Draws in hand, I have all the pieces I need to win the game. A few more turns pass, and I just have to wait until they end their turn to tap every land they have with Giga Draws. For those who don't know, Giga Draws is a card that can tap any permanent for just 1 mana, and has Replicate for the same mana value, meaning that I can spend 5 mana to tap all of their lands and cast spells freely on my turn. That's exactly what happens, and now I proceed to play all my win conditions to generate an infinite loop by casting the Conjurer's Bubble for free and eventually winning the game. After sideboarding, I made some changes to my deck, adding a second Dispel and maybe some Spell Pierces. If my opponent had a Relic of Progenitus, I would consider bringing in a Null. The game started much like the last one, with both of us playing lands and trying to figure out what the other was playing. It's important to start drawing cards early so you can get all your important pieces and avoid them being removed from your graveyard. If your opponent removes your only Ethereum Sculptor, for example, it will be very hard to win. The game became a staring contest, but I had to Weather the Storm in my hand, so it was going to take a long time for my opponent to start pressuring my life total. However, I made a mistake later in the game. I should have tapped my opponent out with Giga Draws, then cast Brainstorm to mill myself out and win, but I forgot to mill myself and ended up with 2 cards left in my library. Let me know in the comments if you see a winning line based on what you can see on the screen. The rest of the cards on my library were just 2 Weather the Storm. I was too tilted to find another winning line, so I made some bad plays and lost the game. In this game, my opponent and I both knew what to expect from each other's deck. It was a matter of playing lands, casting cantrips to draw our interkill cards, and setting up for the big plays with Giga Draws. And when that moment finally arrived, with tons of mana and all my combo pieces in hand, my opponent could see the writing on the wall and conceded the game. I started match number 2 feeling a bit unsure about what I was up against. At first, I thought my opponent was playing some kind of MTG Terror or blue deck, but then they played a mountain and discarded a Dragon's Breath, which made me realize they might be playing Grixis Reanimator. This is a really tough match for me because I don't have any way to deal with an Hologonal Crusher once it hits the board. So I decided to change my strategy and focus on trying to combo them out faster than they could kill me. I wanted to find a Giga Draws to tap their Eldrazi and hopefully win before they could drop anything too big. I figured that Weather the Storm was useless in this matchup and decided to discard it. Unfortunately, I was wrong about their deck. It turned out to be a Grixis self-mill deck that used Tolarian Terror and Gurmag Angler to win, and the Dragon's Breath was just a way to give them haste. This meant that I actually really needed the Weather the Storm to gain life and stay alive against big creatures. I need to buy myself some time, and to do that, Giga Draws is a key part of this plan, as it can tap any permanent, not just lands, meaning it can prevent the Gurmag Angler from attacking. The plan was now to find a second Weather the Storm as quickly as possible, and mill through my deck to increase my chances of drawing it, but I couldn't find it in time and ended up losing the game. So after sideboarding, I decided to bring in a Dispel and 2 Spell Pierce since it wasn't too worried about my opponent's red spell. But since I knew their game plan now, I also decided to bring in Moment Peace to buy myself some time to assemble my own combo. The game started as usual, but my opponent managed to resolve a Golgari Terror on turn 3. It didn't worry me too much though, since I had Weather the Storm in hand and a bunch of cheap spells to gain life with it. I strategically countered the deep analysis to slow them down. I played a Weather the Storm on my opponent's next turn as they cast a spell. From there, it was just a matter of milling myself until I found out Moment's Peace. And that's exactly what happened. I was able to fuck their attack and set up my turn with Jace's Erasure to get closer to killing them. Meanwhile, my opponent could only keep attacking, but with multiple Moment's Peace in the graveyard, they weren't going to kill me anytime soon. It was just a matter of time until I found the rest of my combo pieces. Luckily, I had 2 great card draw spells and a spell to protect my combo enabler. I drew so many cards that my library was almost empty, and on my turn I was finally able to combo out. My opponent tried to kill my Ethereum Sculptor, but even though I had a spell to protect it, they managed to do it anyway. But with 4 Conjurer's Bubble and my library empty, I just put it back on top and kept going as if nothing had happened. My opponent realized they were beating and scooped. I was all set for game 3, but my opponent must have decided they had enough because they conceded right away. So we moved on to our final match. Our final match was pretty spicy because we were up against a deck we don't see very often, Golgari Lifegain combo. This deck relies on lots of life gain cards like Essence Warden to enable creatures like Marauding Blight Priest and Blood Researcher to kill us. Let me know in the comments if you want me to cover this deck later. It seems like a really fun build to try out, and I might have some spicy ideas to get the best out of it. Anyway, since it's an aggro deck that takes a bit to set up, I just need to find a Weather the Storm and I should be good. I'm playing a deck that relies on finding specific combo pieces to win, so I need to dig deeper into my library to find them. One of the key cards I use to do this is Jace's Erasure, which lets me target myself and mill my own library to get closer to finding the cards I need. To make sure I don't accidentally lose any key cards, I also have Conjurer's Bubble that lets me put cards from the graveyard on the bottom of my library. My opponent is putting a lot of pressure on me and has already a pretty good board state, so finding the Weather the Storm to gain some life becomes a top priority. But they already put me down into a super low life total. Luckily, my cantrips came through and I was able to find it and chain multiple spells to get back tons of life. But my opponent wasn't happy about that and started dealing it a lot of damage while adding more threats to the board. That's where Giga Draws really shine for me. I use it as a pseudo fog to buy myself some more time. I tap out their creatures, cast a second Weather the Storm, and on my turn, I had to loot Conjurer's Bubble hoping to find another card or spell. Unfortunately, I didn't find one, and despite having 20 life points, I was already under tons of pressure. And that proved true when they hit with all their creatures and managed to deal 16 damage in one turn. With 5 cards left in my library and a Flash Archaeologist on top, I was able to find my Conjurer's Bubble, mill the rest of my library, and use my Infinite Loop to kill them. At first, they wanted to see how the combo worked, but then they realized what was happening and conceded. I knew I had to adjust my sideboard strategy for this match. Golgari Lifegain combo isn't a deck I really see often, so I opted for an extra Weather the Storm and a Spell Pierce to counter the key cards like the Black Saga. The game started like most others, but I was already under pressure from their strong attackers. However, I had some combo pieces and card advantage spells in my hand, so I planned to let them cast spells on their turn and then use my big Weather the Storm to gain life and potentially find another one while milling myself out. Even though they only played one spell, I still gained a ton of life and managed to survive the turn. Plus, I drew a second Weather the Storm, which meant I could repeat the same play on their next turn and gain even more life. As I continued to cast more spells and refill my hand, I was getting closer and closer to finding all the pieces of my combo. My opponent realized the inevitability of my strategy and conceded the game. Now, if you're new to Pauper and want to test other cool decks, click into that playlist. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.